In the US city Augusta, Georgia, lies or lied a 10-foot pillar towards the center of the city. This column is often referred to as the haunted or cursed pillar, said to kill anyone who touches or moves it. Some, however, suggest it may have a darker history than what's on the surface. This is the haunted pillar of Augusta. To start, I found this topic by random, and I found it too interesting not to cover. On the surface, this appears like an average urban legend, which goes something like this. In the early 1800s, there was a marketplace called the Lower Market, which was located at what is now 5th and Broad Street in Augusta. The market was said to primarily sell agriculture and livestock. In 1829, it succumbed to a devastating fire, destroying most of its structure. The marketplace was rebuilt and back in operation by 1830, where it stood again until 1878. Sometime before 1878, it said a preacher or exhorter was trying to preach his beliefs in Augusta, mainly frequenting the marketplace and surrounding attractions. Owners of the market told the preacher he could not preach there, as it would deter customers, which made him very upset. The preacher retaliated by putting a curse on the marketplace. Many alleged quotes are thrown around to what the preacher actually said, but it is unclear if any of them are true. The most popular quote from the preacher was, "A great wind will destroy this place except for one pillar, and whomever tries to remove this remaining pillar will be struck dead." Later, in 1878, a disastrous tornado struck the city of Augusta, killing 2 people and completely leveling the market. The only structure standing? One lonesome pillar near the exterior of the marketplace. From here, it's said the haunted pillar of Augusta became a curious wonder of the town, and many feared the structure with their lives. The rumor of this pillar being cursed is said to go back since 1878, but in more recent times, the history and belief of this cursed pillar has been largely debated. Let's look at the history of the pillar after 1878. After the tornado, the town rebuilt the market, keeping the original pillar untouched. Many less educated people would attribute the pillar to mystical powers, but the local shops around it used it as a marketing tactic. Many local shops actually used the pillar as a means of attraction and advertisement, saying something like, "Visit our shop near the last pillar." Many flyers and posters were also posted on the pillar. In 1879, the pillar was moved to the opposite street corner by local shopkeeper Theodore I. This was to attract people to his business, Theodore I's Broad Street Grocery. It's worth noting that the marketplace previously mentioned was dismantled in 1891, as the town claimed it was no longer useful anymore, and we'll get to that in a bit. Also, I could find no evidence that anyone died while moving the pillar from its original location. The pillar, now on the opposite side of its original location, stood until 1935. In 1935, a car crash struck the pillar, dismantling it. The pillar was then put back up by another local shopkeeper, but they did not use any remains of the original pillar. The cursed pillar, which was not in its original spot nor consisting of its original structure, then remained in that place until 1958. On Friday the 13th, 1958, the pillar was toppled by a cotton bale that fell out of a passing truck, again destroying the structure. The structure was reassembled, but this time moved back 8 feet from where it was standing. This was to avoid any more accidents with the column. This form of the pillar would seemingly remain untouched until December 17th, 2016, when, you guessed it, another car collision would topple the pillar, destroying it once again. It is unclear exactly why, but the city is yet to put the pillar back up. Though some will claim various odd deaths occurred over the years, mostly construction workers shortly after they manipulated the pillar, I could find no written evidence or connection to this. You may be wondering, how and why did the story ever get popular? Do people actually believe it? Well, in the 1930s, this story actually gained national coverage, but for different reasons. You see, the city of Augusta's local economy was suffering at the time, which isn't totally surprising since the US was going through the Great Depression. To try to boost the local economy, the city of Augusta hired a New York City enterprise, Lockhart International, to create a campaign in an attempt to boost tourism. Having likely heard stories of the haunted pillar previously, it said the firm actually made up the backstory of the pillar, likely just the preacher and the cursed part, and published the story all across the United States. For the most part, this worked. Tourism did in fact go up, though it's unsure exactly by how much. It's worth noting, again, that the people believe this pillar was cursed before the full news stories, so at the very least, the firm exaggerated it. On February 27th, 1931, the Augusta City newspaper, the Augusta Chronicle, published an article which stated, "The ancient pillar long has been a commonplace object, which arouses no more curiosity or interest than that of the subway for a local Manhattanite." It's interesting to see the local newspaper's brutally honest take on the object. Lastly, apparently in 1908, John D. Rockefeller, a very wealthy and well-known businessman, was passing through the area and asked about the pillar. An elderly woman stated it was just a memorial to an old market and nothing else. All of this taken together, the Pillar of Augusta seems to be as similar to any other urban legend you'd find in the United States. Just as any other urban legend, locals have different variations. Some people refer to this pillar as the whipping post. This is thought to stem from the alleged slaves that were said to be chained to the pillar in the 1800s and whipped. This leads to a second variation I found of this local legend. It goes that a slave was tied to a pillar, frequently getting whipped and beaten. The slave, who practiced voodoo, cursed the pillar, saying it shall remain in this spot forever, reminding the future townsfolk of what their ancestors did to their people. I don't know how much I believe about the voodoo part, but slaves being chained to the posts likely had a very real basis in the town's history. Though some deny this, many folks say and show evidence that the old market that sold agriculture and livestock was really just a market for slave trading. One source says the real reason this pillar had become a haunted historical marker is to cover up the fact that the area was infamous for slave trade. Named the Augusta Slave Market, or Old Slave Market, the market sold slaves as far back as early 1800s to 1891, when it was then dismantled. Despite the fact that slavery was outlawed in America in 1865, the market apparently operated for an additional 26 years before it was quote-unquote no longer needed. The source states this historical marker is an example of revisionist history, which is common in the South, to try to deter or deny the fact that slavery was active at the time. It appears the market sold more than what it's remembered for, and slave trade was in fact active in that area during that time. Augusta was ranked second in terms of total slave population in Georgia. It is a very tragic past. Personally, I believe this pillar was connected to a much darker history of the city, standing as a deterrent for a tragic past. I do find it particularly intriguing, however, that at the same time so many individuals looked at it as sort of a totem for mystical powers, either because they actually did, or because it was manufactured for economic gain. Although, as of December 2020, it no longer stands, it remains as a mediocre, sad, and bizarre structure to many people. What are your thoughts on the Pillar of Augusta? I'd love to talk about it in the comments. Thank you for watching this video, and if you want to see more content like this, why not subscribe to the channel? If you have any other suggestions for content, leave me a comment or email me at mt.caveat@gmail.com. Have a great day, guys, and please drive safe.